Shalom, guys. Welcome back to the channel. So, um, I'm in a bit of a conundrum, you guys. I am desperately trying to understand something. I had a friend, a brother that I love, and I recently came to the defense of yesterday, unfriended me on Facebook, and he got upset with me, and it's probably because of what I posted over there about the Passover, you guys. And let me just say something in this video. I'm desperately seeking to understand. I'm not trying to cause division. I really would like to know. And I'm asking you guys that are on the Zadok calendar to please help me understand. Let me show you what I posted. I just posted this today. This is not the post that upset my friend, my brother. I still think he's my brother. He's upset with me because I posed a question on his post. He was posting about Passover and yada, yada, yada yesterday, April 1st, April Fool's Day, proposing that yesterday was Passover. So I simply posted on his thread, can you please show me in the Bible where this is true? Help me understand, why do you come to this conclusion? And then on my own page, as you can see, this is what I posted today. Can someone from the Zadok calendar please meet with me and please show me the biblical proof of why this calendar is why this is the calendar we're supposed to keep? Please. I'm willing to consider, and that is true. I'm willing, if you can show me biblical proof of why the Zadok calendar is the real calendar, I'm willing to walk away and renounce everything that I've taught, everything that I believe to be true. I'll walk away from it and follow that calendar. That's my challenge to you. So that's my challenge. So here's the other part of that. I'm asking you to please listen to me on why I don't believe that is the calendar. And I've studied it, you guys. I understand the concept and all the, the gymnastics of intercalation that has to take place for this to fit. I even see some groups that make it fit so that every Easter Sunday every year is the resurrection of Yeshua, which is, a fixed calendar just is not biblical, you guys. It's not. And even the Jews admit that. So what I posted on my page that I think was offensive to the person that just completely walked away. And by the way, we're called to rightly divide the word and to show ourselves approved, right? How can you cut a brother away and cut him off if they're honestly seeking to try to understand? Now I made a post April 1st. Are you kidding? Oh, the irony. And it might have got upset with that. But I made another one. Where is that at? I don't remember where it is. I don't think I even erased it. Now here's one about the grains, which is another point. I basically said something to the effect of, it was basically a joke, and I didn't mean to offend anyone. So that wasn't the point. The point was to get you guys to think, because the Bible is very clear on what the Moedim is and how the Moedim is determined. It's biblical, and it does not come from Babylon, you folks. But I said, a fool said to his friend, hold my beer. I got an idea. Let's keep Passover on April 1st. And I probably shouldn't have said that. I get it. Some of you are very sensitive to what the calendar is, but my point was merely to get you guys to think. If you're not familiar, this is what it looks like. over at Remnant House, there is a posting of the supposedly the first month, and therefore how we determine the 14th of Nisan, which, by the way, folks, there's historical accounts and how that is done. It was understood by the ancient people. It was done by the sun and the moon, and it was at equinox time. Okay, when the sun and the moon are together. This is when the time change happens. We're talking about a clock, a big hand and a little hand. We can't just follow the big hand or just follow the little hand, folks. It takes both hands to understand Yah's calendar. If you just follow the sun, you're going to be wrong. If you just follow the moon, you're going to be wrong. As it says in Jubilees. Jubilees is talking about people who only follow the moon. When it says you'll be 10 days short. You have to follow both. And by the way, I've done some study on this Zadok calendar, and I cannot find anywhere with anybody, and I'm putting this plea out there, if anybody can show me biblically, prove to me the biblical calendar that is Zadok from the Bible, please show me. I posted on my brother's thread, please show me. And I got stifled. I got canceled and deleted and all that kind of stuff. When I was simply trying to engage in a conversation to please show yourself approved. Show us why the Zadok calendar is the calendar of the Bible. And every single person I ask, folks, and I'm having private conversations on Facebook, you know who you are. Nobody can show me from the Bible the Zadok calendar is the calendar of the Bible. They can only go out. Matter of fact, the comment I got back was when I said, can you show me from the Bible this calendar? They said, no, we can't. It comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'm sorry, but I have a problem with that. But because we're told that the Bible is enough to show ourselves approved, to establish doctrine. It's enough. Now, we can go outside the Bible for historical accounts and things like that, but we can't go outside the Bible exclusively and completely erase the Bible and try to establish a calendar of a people group called the Zadok that supposedly existed in Qumran. First of all, you cannot find any record of anybody called the Zadok existed in Qumran. What you find is a people group that's called the Essenes that dominated that. But in a period of 300 years, 150 years before Yeshua and 150 years after Yeshua, that region was occupied by more than a dozen different people groups. The Essenes were just one. So if we're taking archaeology from that area and establishing doctrine based on some clay sundials and a dial that tracks the moon, and by the way, it takes both to calculate the calendar. And we've got authors in modern day that take that information and they write a whole thesis on what it means. Oh, there must have been this calendar. Except you can't find any people group called the Zadok. Now, Zadok is a proper name. It was the name of the high priest under David. That's correct. And his name is a proper name. It comes from the root that means righteousness. The word Zadok means justice. It means mercy. It is not the name of any people group, folks, and that's a grammatical fact. There were Levites that were priests, and they were exiled at a certain point, and this was around the Maccabee revolt when the Greeks came in. That's when the Levite priesthood changed, and it became Hasmonean or Hellenized priest. This is why we get a priest named Caiaphas, which is a Greek name. John the Baptist was one of the last Levite priests. His father, Zechariah, was a Levite priest. He was in exile and probably in Qumran. But he was not called an Essene, and nor was he called a Zadok. There is no such word of a people group called Zadok. Zadok means justice. It does not mean righteousness. It's a version of the name Zadok, which does mean righteousness. But people who are righteous are not called Zadok. They're called Zedekim. Zedekim is the correct Hebrew word. It's not Zadok. And so I see this whole calendar based around a people group that was supposedly priests called the Zadokah that were at Qumran. But you can find no historical, other than people writing books. Ken Johnson is one of them. You can find nothing. I have a problem with that. Furthermore, you can find nothing in the scriptures talking about a group called the Zadokah. We're talking about the sons of Aaron. By the way, Zadok was a son of Aaron. That means he was a Levite. He was a legitimate priest. Levite, not Zadok. Zadok is his name. Those that came after him were called Levites, folks. And so I cannot find any concrete evidence and nothing biblical. I'm challenging you right now, please come and talk to me. I'll give you the platform. Show me everything you have. I want to see biblical evidence. I don't want to see somebody writing a PDF on their thesis. Okay, that's not biblical. And so all the information that I requested from people to show me why you came to this conclusion, every single one of it is somebody wrote a PDF or some kind of article that somebody wrote, Truther's Journal, those kinds of things. But there's no concrete biblical evidence that shows that there's something called a Zadok calendar. None. However, we can find in the Bible, folks, and I'm willing to show that to you. It's the first place that we see that man is given the Shabbat is unequivocally Exodus 16, where man is given the work week and the Shabbat all at one time. We're collecting manna, which equates collecting omers. And by the way, there's nowhere in the scripture that tells you to collect omers as a commandment, especially when we're counting weeks all the way up to Shavuot. We're supposed to be counting the weeks, not something called the omer. That came because of Constantine, and the Jews were forbidden to count weeks. So it's really discouraging to me to see all of the confusion, and we know who the father of confusion is. It's not Yah. And so I haven't been wanting to get out there really to teach this because I don't want to add to it. But I am concerned, even though I joke and made some posts out joking and mocking and stuff, and I apologize for that. It's a very serious issue. And lots of people are following after false doctrine. Folks, the Bible tells us that the moon determines the Moedim. Psalm 104:19 tells us that the moon determines the Moedim. I'm sorry if you feel like it comes from Babylon, but it actually comes from your Bible. If you would just take the time to go look and read all the scriptures that talk about new moons, full moons, when they're celebrated. He says in Psalm 104:19, he appointed the moon for seasons. Folks, that word in Hebrew is Moedim. Moedim means the Sabbaths, the feast days, the head of the month. All of those are Moedims. They're appointed season times. He says, Psalm 104:19, the moon is appointed for seasons, the sun knows it's going forth. In other words, you have a big hand and a little hand on the clock. If you go just by one and not the other, you're going to be wrong. That's Bible. That's Bible. I want to show you what March 15th, better known by Rome as the Ides of March. You ever heard of the Ides of March? Remember Julius Caesar? You can Google this. Julius Caesar was killed on the Ides of March, which is a full moon. That is an established fact historically. Not only that, meteorologists all around the world agree that the middle of the month is the full moon, and that the head of the month is when there's no moon at all. And we're building on that moon. That's a fact, folks. And there are some that on the internet, especially with the calendar, that like to flip that around and make you think that the full moon is the head of the month because of the misunderstanding of the word cassette. In Hebrew, you can have words that are a positive and a negative. They can mean polar opposites depending on how you use it. That word means concealed, but yet King James interpreted it as a full moon. And the logic from people that explain this is it's concealed in light. Folks, the word is kasef. It means concealed. The only time we have a concealed moon is at the head of the month. It's how we know we're going into a new month. And we build on this. You can see this from the book of Enoch, somewhere around the 70th chapter into the 72nd chapter, where it talks about the lunations of the moon and how they're broken up into lunations. The moon is like one of the hands on the clock, folks, like the big hand. It marks off the days. So there's different lunations. So March 15th, and every month around the 15th. So you could have a full moon anywhere from the 13th to the 17th, anywhere in there. Any given year that can oscillate back and forth because there's an ebb and flow in our solar system. Every year, Passover is going to fall either on the middle of March or the middle of April every year. It's not every April 1st. It's not, folks. And if you're doing that, it's in error. And I think it's very ironic that people kept Passover on what is most commonly known as April Fool's Day. It's so ironic. It's hysterical. Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad at me. If we go to the ARCO volume, and I guess, with anything, you're going to have detractors and people that say, oh, that's fraud. That's a forgery. It's not real. Just like they say with the Ark of the Covenant and with, the Shroud of Turin, they'll say that's not real. Well, folks, I happen to believe that Pilate really did send a report to Rome. The men who found this in Constantinople, or actually in Rome, this was originally in Latin and was found at the Vatican. So it is a report from Pilate at the time of the crucifixion, Passover, to Caesar. And I want you to see what he says in this because it lines up with the Bible, but it also sets a precedent. We have known from Judaism and what the Jews do that for thousands of years, Passover is at a full moon. Now, there'll be some that say, oh, no, it's all wrong. They've been doing it all wrong. Observing the moon comes from Babylon. When I can clearly show you from the Bible that the Father created the sun and the moon, and it's a part of his clock. And to discount it means you're in error, folks. I love you, but you're wrong. Listen to what Pilate says. And this is at the crucifixion. But he's coming to a point where people were kind of taken back on the signs and what was taking place, because at full moon time at Passover, it's impossible to have a solar eclipse. It's impossible. And in the Bible records that there was a 3-hour eclipse, meaning this was not natural. It's not natural. And a lunar eclipse, solar eclipse only is about 7 minutes for the totality to move on through. Now, the whole event may be several hours, but the moon is not covering the sun and the whole land is darkened for 3 hours at a time. and the earth quaking. Pilate records, by degrees the day was darkened like winter's twilight, such has been at the death of the great Julius Caesar, which was 77 years before Yeshua died. So the same exact event happened when Julius Caesar was assassinated. There was a 3-hour eclipse, and you can Google this, the eclipse that happened when there's all kinds of legend and lore, and it's very debatable that it was impossible, it couldn't have happened. And that's because it was an unnatural event, just like what happened at the crucifixion. It was not a planned eclipse. Matter of fact, one of the oracles in Jerusalem said the world must be falling apart. This is not supposed to happen, right? It was likewise as the Ides of March. You guys know what the Ides of March is? Sorry, I wasn't showing you this. Arco volume, Pilate's letter to Caesar. By degrees, the days were darkened like a winter's twilight, such as had been seen at the death of the great Julius Caesar. It was likewise the Ides of March. All right, so what's the Ides of March? You ever heard of that? Have you studied Julius Caesar, the story of Julius Caesar? You heard the term Ides of March? The Ides of March, you guys, were associated with full moon. That's historic fact. This year's March blood moon during the total lunar eclipse. So lunar eclipses can happen, but solar eclipses cannot happen. You can have a blood moon only. And by the way, at the crucifixion, there was a solar eclipse and a blood moon. You cannot have both at the same time. It's one or the other. So the Ides of March, which is the 15th, in the earliest Roman calendar, the Ides of March would have been the first full moon of the new year. The Ides of March. So the first new moon of that year, which would be what? Nisan 1. When is Passover? Nisan 14. So if Nisan 1 is the new moon, Ides of March is the full moon. We just established that you cannot have a Passover without a full moon. It's like that every year, folks. Have you looked at the moon last night? You know what it looks like? It's a sliver. We're around the new moon for April. And it just so happens this year, Passover is April 12th and runs the full week. There's a full moon. Now, with the Zadok calendar, what I've noticed, and by the way, Zadok himself under David did not ignore the moon. Go and read your Bible. They declared the new moon. David wouldn't meet with Saul, or there was an issue about meeting with Saul at the new moon time, and it was a two-day new moon. And he was going to meet after the new moon, right? So even Zadok understood the cycle of the moon. So it doesn't make any sense to me that we have a calendar named after Zadok where the moon is not even considered at all. Furthermore, the Hebrew calendar is an agricultural calendar. Right now, at Passover time, we're looking for something called a Abib, which is the ripening of the barley grain. Okay? And the day of first fruits, the high priest is taking a clutch of that grain the stalks. So the full stalk, a clutch of grain, and he's waving, it's called sheaves, waving the sheaves, a sheave wave offering. Well, the barley's not ready for harvest. And by the way, when the Exodus happened, you can see that the barley was not ready for harvest, and it was smitten. It was coming into Abib. It was not ready for harvest. So we're not harvesting barley and we're not harvesting wheat. Wheat is on the other end of the spectrum, because the whole calendar is based around grain and grapes and olives. So at Passover time, we're waving sheaves the day after Passover. That's the first fruits of the harvest, meaning we have several weeks to go before the whole field is brown, because barley and wheat and other grains are left in the field to dry. And then it's harvested. So barley from Passover time is going to be drying in the field, which brings me to my next point, because around the 50-day count at Pentecost that Christians do, and I get people sending me pictures saying, it's the wheat harvest. No, it's not. I keep getting people and videos, pictures and videos of people sending me that is barley being harvested. And there's a way to tell. There's a way to tell, even though it's hard to see from the picture what kind of grain it is, the way that they're cutting it tells you what kind of grain it is. Wheat is not cut and bundled into bales for human consumption. And it's not even fed to animals. Animals are not fed wheat. Animals are fed barley, oats, and rye. Those three grains. So those three grains, even though you can make bread from it, is usually grown for the animals. Okay? Horses, goats, all that, they eat this. All right? Keep that in mind. So the Ides of March is the full moon. In the Arco account, Julius Caesar is telling you at the time that Yeshua was killed, it was the same thing that happened during the time of Julius Caesar was killed. Pilate is telling us that it was likewise the Ides of March. In other words, the year that Yeshua was killed on the Julian calendar was March 15th. And that does fit with the lunar solar calendar. Around the 15th of the month, even on the Julian or the Gregorian, is going to be around the full moon time. It will oscillate throughout the year, month to month. But every month on Yah's calendar, the 8, 15, 22, 29 is always going to be a Shabbat. So the 15th is always a full moon. The first of the month is always going to be new moon. The 8th of the month is going to be half a moon. So you can literally look at the clock up in the sky and know exactly if it's Shabbat or not. So we got historical account from Julius Caesar telling us that Yeshua was crucified at a full moon time. Let's go to Remnant House here once more at their calendar. And I can show you. So he's got Nisan 14. First of all, the first day of the first month he's got on here is the 19th. By the way, that was a waxing gibbous moon. This calendar has no regard for the moon at all. It was a waxing gibbous. On the first day of April, which is Nisan 14 here, the moon is not considered at all. It's around new moon time. It's a few days after new moon time, but it's the incorrect day. Passover is going to be on a full moon. All right, so he's a couple of weeks off on this, and this is consistently every year. Consistently. Now, let's say Passover is April 1st. Okay. That means first fruits is April 2nd, and we're doing a wave offering. It's also a Shabbat. Every Passover And every Sukkot is going to be buttresses, it's going to be butted against a Shabbat. It's called a high Shabbat. So the 14th of Nisan is Passover. The 15th of Nisan is a Shabbat. And this is why we see they didn't leave Egypt until the evening of the 15th, because they waited till after the Shabbat to leave. One month later, they get to a place called Elim. This is Exodus 16. You can go and read that. It is the 15th day of the month when they get there, and they rest when they get there. And at the evening, they have some quails. And the father says, tomorrow is your first day of work, and you're going to collect manna for 6 days. On the seventh day, you're going to collect sixth day, you're going to collect twice as much because you're going to rest on the seventh day. So if the first day of work is the 16th, the first Shabbat ever given to the Hebrews is the 22nd day of the month. So we now know 2 days of each month, that is the Shabbat, the 15th and the 22nd. You only need one to reconcile the whole month. We have two. The 15th and the 22nd is when they rested. We can multiply that all the way up until the time of Yeshua. But this was the cycle that they stayed on all the way up until the time of Yeshua. And we know that Yeshua's time, it was on this calendar because he made no correction. If the calendar was wrong, folks, in the time of Yeshua, would he have not addressed it? Historically, we can see that the calendar came into question in the time of Constantine in 325, 322 to 325, around that time. He made changes, and Hillel the Great was the one that made Saturday the Shabbat. Saturday was not the Shabbat during the time of Yeshua. Furthermore, it was a Julian calendar with 8 days on the week. There was no way that Saturday was the Shabbat when you got 8 days in the week. We're on a Gregorian calendar, folks, and that happened in the 1500s. So how are you going to reconcile a 7-day continuous cycle? Saturday is the Shabbat when we got two different calendars in question, Julian and Gregorian. Reconcile that for me. It doesn't work. To add to the confusion, because I think there's also a discrepancy with the grain, because at Pentecost time, I start getting pictures like this from people when I say there's no harvestable wheat. This is one of the pictures I get. And this is from Israel. This is from Israel. And this is in May at Pentecost time when I'm arguing with people that there's no freaking wheat. And they're telling me, oh, Jonathan, they're cutting wheat right now. Folks, please listen to me. Wheat is not cut and baled up for animals. Please, somebody out there, please, with farm, you got homesteads, you're farming. Please tell me you understand this. When you see grain that's cut up, and you got to look, first of all, it's green. You see how this wheat is wheat. This grain is green. Wheat is not cut when it's green. This is barley that's cut, and it's going to be baled. And it's laying out like this to dry for a few days because they do bale it up for animals. And it's not just barley. They mix this with oats. Sometimes they mix it with rye, but it's all made for animals. Okay. Is there a way for me to scroll through? Let me pull up another one. Let me show you why there's so much confusion. We're looking at barley, rye, and wheat. You see how they look real similar? Now, from a distance, it might be hard if you're not somebody that's educated in this, it might be hard for you to distinguish which one is which. They have different growing seasons that do lap. But barley is being harvested at 50 days when you guys are celebrating Pentecost, it's barley that's being harvested. It is not wheat. And so I get these pictures from people. Oh no, Jonathan, they're harvesting wheat, brother. And I get pictures, you know, like this right here. So this is barley that's been harvested and cut into row or raked into rows. That's after it's been cut, because a tractor is going to come along here and bale it up. Okay. I got a couple more for you. I'll show you this one right here. It looks like wheat, folks. I give you that. It does look, for the untrained eye, that looks like wheat. It does. It's all brown. It looks like wheat. But the way you can tell the difference is wheat is not baled up for animals. And humans don't eat grain that's been baled up, folks. That's stored for animals. So this is being cut for bale. It's being cut for bale. Let me show you what. Here's a bigger picture of a field. Same thing. This is Israel. And by the way, you can see lavender growing at the same time in the middle of that field. Folks, tell me when lavender grows and when it's flowering. It's in the spring. It's not in the summer. That's lavender growing in the field there. Okay. All right. So a couple more. This is an actual wheat field, but it's an immature wheat field. Matter of fact, this is what the grain looks like of wheat when Pentecost is being celebrated by Christians. That's what it looks like. If this was barley, it would be ready for a beat. But this is not barley. At the time of the wheat harvest at Shavuot, we're waving loaves of bread, meaning that you had to harvest the grain, make it, first of all, process it, winnow it, thresh it. Then it's got to be processed into flour. Then it's got to be made into bread and into loaves. You're telling me at 50 days we're doing that with this kind of grain right here? No, we're not. It's not happening at 50 days. So at 50 days, all the pictures that I'm getting sent is actually barley. And let me show you how. Like I kind of Googled it and I was like, what do we find if we go onto YouTube and Google it? Can we find wheat fields being harvested in Israel? So here's one. Here's one, and it does look like wheat. And this is around Pentecost time. There's only one problem. This is not wheat. This is at the end of the barley harvest. And the reason you could tell is you see those rows that are being cut out there in these fields. This field here, it's being rowed up for bale. It's being baled up. And this is probably not just barley. It's probably rye and oats growing in here, because they commonly do this for animals. Let me show you another one that I found off of YouTube. And this happened to be a guy that just happened to go around with a drone filming stuff. And he came across this situation thinking that it was wheat. So see, so if you put in there wheat harvest in Israel, right? He's flying a drone and look at the field. You see the green rows here? Look at the tractor and how this is being harvested. Folks, if you're a farmer, please help me to get these people to understand. This is not how you cut wheat. This is grain that's been cut for baling. It's being cut for baling, folks. That's not a harvester. When you see wheat being harvested, there's a big combine that's harvesting the wheat. It's threshing the wheat in the machine and it's blowing it to another trailer that's being pulled by a tractor and it's coming out as grain. This is being thrown on the ground after because it's still green. It's still green to this. It's got to turn color. Alfalfa's done the same way. Alfalfa's done the same way. Let me show you the other one from this guy's channel. Which shows the actual baling of that same field. All right, here's a barley field. This is a wild barley field. And this is on Joseph Drummond, another one contributing to the confusion here. And the moment this is a wild barley field. This is not a cultivated barley field. So we cannot be, and furthermore, it's on the side of a hill with most direct sun. So it is advanced in its growth and it's lanky. It's not healthy. Okay. It's not healthy. I want to go to this guy's channel here because he's just a YouTuber flying around with a drone, scenic skyland, right? So it's not about wheat. It's not about religion or anything like that. He's got just a potpourri of things. Now he does have another video on here of the actual harvest. Come on, where's it at? Here it is right here. The very same field that's been cut into rows and it's laying on the ground. Now you see you got tractors that are coming through with a baler. This is the same field, folks. And he's calling it a harvest. You see those are bales out in the field. Wheat is not baled for human consumption. Wheat is used for humans. It's not fed to animals. Barley, oats, rye, those kinds of things in small quantities is, but not wheat. This is not wheat being baled. So this guy's wrong. And not only that, the pastor that was standing in a barley field in May, folks, in May. The Bible tells us that the wheat harvest is in summer with grapes and with olives. Tell me how you're going to have a wheat harvest if you're celebrating Passover on April 1st. First fruits is April 2nd. 50 days from then, for those of you who are living in Kansas or Wyoming or wherever they're growing wheat, walk out into the fields at that time and tell me what you see. You're going to see green, mature. It's not brown yet. It's not ready to be harvested, but it's mature. Again, we're not waving sheaves, we're waving loaves. So you have to have harvestable grain. Folks, that's a bale of straw for animals. And it's made from barley and oats and maybe rye in here. This is not wheat. And I know people get upset with me and think it's the craziest thing. But folks, if you go from what Leviticus tells you, 7 Sabbaths complete and 7 Sabbaths complete and add 50 days, it's 102 days, which brings you to the actual, lo and behold, if you do that count and look in the world, what do you see? Wheat harvest going on. It's not a conspiracy. It's the truth. There's a wheat harvest going on. If you do the count right, there's a wheat harvest going on. Tell me how there's a wheat harvest going on 50 days prior to that too. There's not. It's the end of the barley harvest that you're seeing at 50 days. It's not wheat. Folks, please consider what I'm telling you here. Do your own research. At some point, I'm going to be forced to fly to Israel and go to these actual fields and go and talk to the farmers before many of you are going to believe what I'm telling you, even though you live in America in the grain belt and can go and ask any farmer, go and observe yourself and see that there's no wheat at 50 days when Christians are celebrating Pentecost, right? So if your Passover is wrong, your Shavuot's going to be wrong. And your whole year, every feast after that is going to be off. So if you're teaching people that Passover is April 1st, folks, it's more than ironic. You truly are a fool. You are completely ignoring what the Bible says and going after what men teach with no biblical evidence based off of speculation, off of archaeology from the Dead Sea Scrolls. Bits and pieces, as somebody said to me. Oh, we can piece together bits and pieces. I'm sorry, that's not enough for me to base my life on. And that's what it comes down to, your life. You can bring a curse on yourself for teaching people the wrong way to keep these feasts. That's why it's serious. It's why I take it serious. I'm not doing this to cause a division, folks. Not at all. I do this because I love Gerald Tama and all the other ones that came out of the remnant house that are still keeping this calendar. I love you guys. I'm not mad at you, brother, for unfriending me. It was a response, and I might have offended you, and I apologize for that. But I didn't mean to offend you or be malicious. I was trying to spark a conversation with you. And listen, the challenge is, maybe I shouldn't say challenge. I'm not challenging anybody. I am honestly inquiring for anybody to come and show me biblically why the Zadok calendar is the calendar we should be keeping. Why is Saturday the Shabbat? Show me with the Bible. I will follow you and that calendar till the end of eternity, if that's the case. Please help me understand. Otherwise, I have to keep this same position that the Bible, it means what it says, and it teaches truth. You just have to look at it. And the math don't lie. When you go to Exodus 16 and you look at the math, and ironically, verse 22, talking about the first Shabbat, is verse 22, which is the actual first day of the month. That was a Shabbat, the 22nd. It's more than coincidence. Y'all had put that there for a reason. Okay. So I hate that there's confusion on this subject. I don't like it. It bothers me. It grieves my spirit, even though I joke and I might mock. It's not to be malicious, folks. I want to hear a comeback. I want to hear a comeback. Tell me why you believe. I come on here and tell you why I believe this way, but I have a hard time going to places like Monte, Judah, folks. Put out a video 2 days ago, the Zadok calendar in the last generation. And not one place in this 45-minute video does he show why this calendar's the right one. All it is his opinion and why he thinks it's the right one. No, nothing biblical, nothing from the Bible. It's all that, coming from Qumran, and it's Dead Sea Scrolls and all that kind of stuff. Like that establishes doctrine. It doesn't, folks. It doesn't. God gave us a Bible to glean from. And it's sufficient for all doctrine and all reproof. It's sufficient. Meaning, I don't need to go outside of the Bible to a book that has questions about it. For instance, Jubilees. I love reading the book of Jubilees, but most scholars have a consensus and say that there are more than one author and they are contradicting one another. Google it, folks. This is why it was not put in the canon. Jubilees has 28 contradictions, and I, of all things, it's on the calendar. Two opposing opinions on the calendar. How can you trust a book like that? And what are you drawing from one side of the argument? Help me understand the logic of why Jubilees is where to go. You can't do it. You can't do it. And so I'm in this conundrum. Even Monty Judah cannot explain to me why the Zadok calendar is the calendar of the Bible. And I want to know this more than anything, folks. I'm at a place now where I'm very frustrated that I see people that wave, of all things, like the Bible says, like wheat in a field. They sway from one opinion to another, back and forth with the wind. They're so unstable, right? And I don't want to add to that confusion. I want to be a light in a dark room, not a light in a room full of lights. How can you make a difference if the room is illuminated? How is your light going to help anything? I want to be a light in a dark place. And so that's why this is concerning to me. I think there's a lot of confusion on this subject, and we need clarification. I don't think the Christians have it. I don't think the Jews have it. I think it's somewhere in between, and I think the Bible holds the key to that. So I'm sorry to those of you that I recently made friends because you came out of the remnant house. My objective in being friends with you and loving you like a brother or sister was not to divide on the calendar. Matter of fact, I pumped the brakes and didn't teach that for a long time. I let whoever post whatever and didn't say a word. It was only when I started seeing people keeping the Passover on April 1st that I thought, this is more than ironic. And I had to say something. I'm sorry if I offended you, but this is coming from my heart, folks. I believe it's that important. Yeshua was crucified at Passover at a new moon, a full moon, not no moon. The Bible tells us clearly that the moon has a purpose. And I get it. I hear what the brother's saying about, no, the moon observation came from Babylon. I don't agree with that, because they were doing it long before Babylon. Matter of fact, Daniel went to Babylon teaching the wise men of Babylon the way it was. So if anything came from Babylon, it was because of Daniel. Right? Remember, the wise men found Yeshua because of what they had learned in the school from Daniel. All right. So I just had to give my 2 cents on, and I think of no, okay, one more. Let's go to this. So one of the first epiphanies I had when I was driving across the United States at the real Shabbat time, which is not May, this is July. Lo and behold, I start coming across field after field after field after field of wheat. Listen to what I say here. This field, this is not the first one I've seen. Folks, this is wheat in the field, in its season. In its season. No matter where you are in the world, there's wheat growing at the same time. I shouldn't have said anywhere in the world. It's anywhere in the northern hemisphere, because the fact is, in places like Australia, this is going to be the exact opposite of what it is here. They're not harvesting wheat at the same time we are. As a matter of fact, it's winter time for them when we're harvesting wheat, and vice versa. So there is that. I don't know how you're going to reconcile that on a flat earth, but that is a fact that the harvest seasons are different in the southern hemisphere than they are in the northern hemisphere. So please take it into consideration, folks. Please give me a thumbs up. Help me with this. If you've got some insight and you can help me understand the Zadok, I am open to that. I will start teaching it. If you can show me from the Bible how we get it. Always remember, I love you guys. Shalom to you. Passover's coming up. It's on the full moon, folks. If you just want to know, read your Bible. Yah loves it. He doesn't want all this confusion. It's the enemy that does it. Yah is not the author of confusion. And so I apologize. I repent if I've added to any kind of confusion. I'm sorry about that. I never wanted to do that. I only want people to walk in truth. So shalom to you. May Yah bless you and keep you. We'll see you in the next video.